Before we start, introduction, my name is Abigail Welbeck. I'm the Director of Career Services at HEIs.
So we're going to go through a few questions. The first one is, what do you need funding for? A lot of us can get into activity-driven centers where we're just following, oh, this is a good idea, let's do it. Oh, let's do this, let's try this. But we need to pause and make sure that whatever that we are thinking of doing is directly connected to the goals of our institution. So let's think about, what does your institution need? Do they have written out key performance indicators, targets, objectives? Do you have your institution's mission? Can you quote it? I'm not saying, I'm not going to call anybody to quote it, but I'm saying, do you have an idea what it is, right? Do you have an idea what your institution wants to achieve? Right. So we have this in HEIs, right? I think I explained in one of the earlier sessions. What we do with our internship evaluations is we have employers evaluate our students, and we collate all that evaluation and we create a report out. We analyze the report and we analyze the data and create a report out of it. And what we've done with that information is we've linked it to the, HEIs has what we call learning goals, and it's across all the departments on campus. So that's what informs what we do. That's what we want to incorporate into the student experience, right from in the classroom, outside the classroom. And so what we've done with the feedback we've gotten is we have directly linked it to the evaluation. So essentially, employers are evaluating our students based on the 8 learning goals. They're answering different questions, but the questions are weighted against the 8 learning goals. So they are literally so we are saying, oh, these are the things we are doing with our students, but employers are now telling us, rating us per what the standards we've set for ourselves, whether we are achieving it or not. And an institutional KPI for HEIs is that we need to achieve good or excellent in all 8 learning goals. Each year we do this report. So it's an institutional KPI. So I know that in my institution, I have to make sure students have internship opportunities to even start with, right? B, I have to make sure that they can be assessed. C, I have to make sure that there's exposure to industry, right? D, I have to make sure that we are running workshops that are helping them to build these skill sets, right? So that when they go into industry, they can display that. So I'm looking at what the institution has set as its targets and how it fits into the work I do, and it's beginning to inform the activities that I'm doing, therefore why I need funding. I don't know if you get that. So it's not about, oh, I think students doing this is a good idea. It's why you need to ask yourself in your different institutions and different groups, why do you need funding? Why do you need funding? If your institutional management asks you right now, you say, oh, we need funding. They say, why do you need the funding? What are you going to connect what you're doing to? It has to speak to a need, right? So that's one thing, one of the questions I have is, why do you need funding? Make sure that it's linked to your institutional goals and targets. So the second question is, how much do you need? If you had an investor seated right in front of you, somebody who wants to fund your initiatives and says, how much do you need? What are you going to say? If you need a career fair, you know, okay, I want to run 2 career fairs in a year. What does that mean in terms of costing? Canopies, whatever, cost it out, you know. So when somebody is seriously interested in investing, you can tell them, this is what I need it for, this is how much we need. So that's another thing you need to think about. How much is it that you need?
Yeah, just to build up on the suggestion, because also even though you need like to know how much you need, you can think of how to sustain that, you know, like so that it's not every year you come and
don't worry.
Does that make sense?
Go on to
okay,
that.
Okay.
Yes, we're going to go on to that, right? Okay, so the next keyword I need you to remember is collaboration. You cannot achieve this alone, and even that's why you even need funding, right? You need funding, and somebody has to help you out with that funding. So who is that person, or who are those people? Who can fund? Going to your question. Think about your different contexts, right? There are some institutions that have government funding. They can access it. So that means government is one of the key stakeholders you need to think about. There are some institutions that is the institutional management
that have to give the funding. So you realize there was one group that I said, there's funding, but they don't have access to it yet. So there are some institutions that have funding, but because you haven't made a case, that funding is not seated in your office just yet, right? There are some institutions, employers, we all work with employers, so employers are another key stakeholder. Alumni giving, maybe your alumni can be able to give something back to your, okay, donors, funding organizations, we have a lot of them around. I think that I even invited one into this session. I'm not sure, maybe they'll join online. Okay, let's go. All right, so now we've identified what we need funding for. We've identified how much we need. We've identified who can fund. Now, how can we get the buy-in of whoever we've identified? All right, so it's all context specific, right? Understand the stakeholders that you have access to as an institution, right? Ashesi has a donor community. So we know donors for us is one of the ways we can, one of the stakeholders we can look at. It may not be applicable to your case. So what applies to you? Right now, how can you get their buy-in? Because remember that we are looking at sustainable funding, not just a one-time, let me just come in, give this because you're bothering me, and then I'm out. So we want to look at an investor or somebody who's funding, who is a partner with you in your institution, and not just giving you a check. Right? And how do you do that? You want them to have the feeling of they are invested in what is happening in the institution. If you have $1 million and you invested into something, you are literally following whatever you invested in as you wake up, morning, afternoon, evening, where is my investment at? Right? Because you are invested into it. So you want employers to, or whoever, employers, donors, whoever it is you've identified, to feel committed and invested. Right? Involve them in every aspect of what you're doing. If it's taking, you can go to, if it's taking their feedback, implementing it. People like to, and industry, let me take employers, right? They are an easy one here. Industry feels they have a lot to share, right? They want to be engaged. They want to share their feedback, what your students need, what they are doing well, what they're not doing well, giving them the platform to do that. And implementing. It's good to take the information and the data, but you have to implement it. You implement it and let them see that you are implementing it. And involve them in the implementation. If they say, oh, you know, the students have to get some industry experience, let them be the ones who employ your students for the internship so they can see, right? And then when you measure success, share that success with them. Let them see how their feedback has resulted in success. That way they are invested. They feel like I'm part of the institution. So if I'm part of the institution, then it's easy when you come to me to say, oh, this is what I need money for, because you can see it, right? For them to easily want to give money to it. That's sustainable. So it's not a one-time check, but over a period of time, they are invested into the institution. So I had some examples: advisory council for curriculum development, student development, guest lecturing. Some of them are really interested in coming to lecture in the classrooms, or for your career development initiatives. Job shadowing. For a job shadowing program, the students are not paid. They just need to be immersed into the workplace, right? And so we have to have, and it's work to be able to have somebody shadow you and teach and mentor. So, you know, being able to do that as well. And then feedback for strategy development. And for those of them who are engaged, recognize them publicly and reward them. I'm not talking about financially. It could just be, you know, one of the things we do is we mention them on social media, you know, and we tag the companies, right? And it's like a bragging right for them, right? When our mentorship cycle ends, we have a poster we do with all our mentors. We post it on social media. Thank you to all our mentors for this year. Recognize them, reward them. Let other employers want to be part of the network of employers who are supporting and investing into the institution. If you have employers who are funding, recognize them. Invite them to your graduation ceremonies. Do a thank you to them. It's not money that you're giving to them, but this is recognition. Employers want to be visible and recognized. So how are you doing that? And when you know when somebody feels good, you're making them feel good, they want to keep giving, right? So that you keep making them visible. So that's what you want to do. Okay, so show evidence or results. So another way to get their buy-in is how do you show them that you are achieving results? And this has to do with, a part of that has to do with branding. A part of that has to do with, I put trust in there because they need to trust the system. Why should I, and even for us, Where do you put your money? You put your money in an investment that you trust, right? So they need to trust that you are going to do what you say you will do. It's not that, oh, our students are great, they can do this and that. When the students come to the workplace, are they actually what you're saying they are? And excellence has to show consistently, right? So consistently showing that. And so they need to trust in the system. They need to trust in what you're churning out. It helps that you involve them in the process, so they feel like, once I'm involved, I can also add my quota to it, and the students can become who I need them to be when I need to hire, right? And so it's very important to show evidence. It's not enough to feel like, oh, it's a no-brainer, you know our students do well. No, you have to take, and how do you do that? You need data, metrics, outcomes. What are our students doing out there? How are they adding value to organizations? So how are students performing at work? How are they adding value? What impact are they making to businesses or to their communities? What businesses are they starting? Which problems are the businesses they are starting solving? And you want to create a report. And remember, the same way that employers want to be visible, you also want to be visible so they see. Because if an employer feels like you are a good brand, everybody wants to associate with excellence and with success. So they need to see. So you need to start taking metrics, right? Collecting data. Where are we starting on? What's the baseline? How are students improving over time? How can we tell the story of outcomes, right? That our students are really doing and creating impact. It could be on your website. It could be on a newsletter that you are sending out to employers monthly. And I'll show you why. Communicate those results effectively. It's not enough to have the data and the metrics that are saying something, but you need to know how to communicate it to get the attention of the prospective funding organization, right? How many of you have done CV building or CV writing sessions or interview sessions for your students? Okay. What are some of the things we tell them that they have to self-advocate? If you're not articulating your value proposition clearly, there are no potential employers that are going to hire you. If you're not giving your elevator pitch, right, you're not going to get that interview. Now you need to take all that information and apply that messaging to your department. Are you advocating for your department? Are you giving your own department's elevator pitch? Are you pitching yourself to that funding organization? It's very important. Or else that opportunity you think should come to you is not going to come to you. And the next one after that is communicating relevance. So yes, our students, 50% of our students go on and do internships every year. What does that mean to the employer? So why should I care? You need to make it relevant to the course of the employer. So if you look here, it says identify what your key stakeholder needs are and create messaging or product that satisfy those needs. So you can have an employer who says, I want to support the work of graduates who stay on the continent. You want to say, okay, look, 85% of our graduates are staying on the continent. They are doing these things on the continent. They are creating change in this and that way. Immediately you have the attention of that person. Because there are donors who are ready to sponsor there are specific reasons why they want to sponsor. Understand what those needs are and make sure your messaging is targeted towards that. Don't just wait for when you think, oh, I need funding, so let me go and start doing it now. The messaging and how to send the messaging is something you need to be doing constantly over the course of the year as you engage with whether employers, donors. So the outcomes you are communicating. I mentioned newsletters, I mentioned website, I mentioned social media. Some of you may have Instagram accounts. What are you using those places for, those platforms for? Be visible to the person you think can fund you. And communicate those things over time so that when you need the funding, they already know the value that your students are bringing. It's easy to make the case. So now you need to think of what are outlets of platforms that you can use to communicate. First of all, you need to track. Because what are you going to communicate? You need to track, so you have something to communicate. You need to make it relevant to whoever you are targeting. 3 is you have to make sure that you are communicating constantly in the course of the year. So that when you need the funding, it's almost like somebody said, build the network or create the network so that it's there when you need it, right? So what you want to do is to build the network, create it, do this messaging so that when you need the money, it's a no-brainer. They want to fund because they see the value in them funding.
And they see how relevant it is to their business and what they're doing, because you have made the communication very relevant to them. So this was an example. So another thing you want to do is perhaps you track over time, right? So you can start small with some of these things, right? Because some of these things, even to start the program, track it takes money. So start small, right? And then you let them know that, oh, okay, these are the 5 programs, so we've tracked. These are the 5 programs that will potentially go away if we don't get funding, or this is the impact that's going to disappear with the students we serve, or alumni, or whatever it may be, if we don't get this and that amount of funding, right? So they see impact. Oh, you've started something with the students, it's doing well. We don't want it to go away, we want you to sustain it. So how can we support that? So what you want to do with the metrics is telling the story of outcomes. People remember stories a lot. So you want to put it into actual student experiences. So if you're looking at internship and you're talking about how many students go on internships and all of that, you want to put faces to that metrics, put faces to it. Student stories, individual student stories, that what they've gone, where they've gone, what they've done, the impact they've made in the organizations. Begin to post. Some of the information you need to start posting out there. It's very critical. Put faces to it. Talk about students' internship success, right? And this is what I was talking about earlier. Newsletters, the website, social media, invite them to major events like graduation, because then invite them to events that get them to see your students in good standing, you see? So invite them to those ones. And also, so we've talked a lot externally, but remember that advocating for what you do is not just your department's work. It takes a whole village. So identify partners also within the institution who can speak for you and the work of your department when you're not even there. So is it faculty? I know sometimes it's interesting with faculty, but we can engage them because they are interfacing with the students we want to train. So what benefits can they also, how can we also train them to, like training the trainer, right? For them to see the necessity of working with the students and helping them to accomplish what they need to accomplish, for example. So it takes a whole village. So identify the stakeholders, collaborate with other departments. These are some of the other things you can think about. There are some departments within our institutions who have budget for some reason. They have budget, but we may not have budget. What do you want to do with that? Is identify who those departments are. Once again, relevance. So let me give an example. So we have an alumni relations office, and career services and alumni relations most often than not have some synergies, right? So we want to identify programming that is common to both departments. Maybe alumni relations has money and we don't have money. So how can we create them, bring them on board as a partner and get them to agree to do a program with us, right? Get them to do something. So identify departments in your institutions that already have budgets and see how to create synergies. But all the things I've talked about, relevancy, all of that, you do same with them as well, even though they're internal partners. But do same as well with them so that it's easy for them to want to fund you. A module that we have in HEIs is career peer advisors, right? And I mentioned them because they really help us. They really help us to do some of the things I've talked about. Social media, communication, all of that, helping students with CVs and all of that, right? So this was just a bit of those of you who may be looking into, maybe if you're really looking into setting up a CPA program, we can talk later about that into more detail. So we train them to provide some basic career support to the students and to serve as brand ambassadors for our department, right? And so another internal partner, you want to create student partners. And you remember students' voices are, once you're able to get other students who are advocates for your department, that creates a real significance, for your department. So they help us through social media, internal, external communications, career fairs, all of that. They give us enhanced student engagement because they are kind of like the bridge between us and students. And that's a great part. You don't have to, it's not necessarily paid. We started out as our CPA program, it wasn't a paid program. But what you do with that is you give them opportunities that other students don't have access to. And that way they see it as a role they want to take part in. And they get them to do all these other things for you. That gives you visibility for the person who needs to see you and to give you funds. So these are some of the things that CPAs have helped us to do in the past, right? If you look at when they started supporting us on social media, Facebook reach, within a couple of months, we reached some of the highest,
number of the target audience than we ever had before. And you have to understand that students, you have to learn how to speak the student language, right? And some of us, the kind of generations we are from, the connection is not there. So you need to help, you need students who can help you to do that, right? And then even on Instagram, same. Within some couple of months, we had reached, we were been able to reach a large amount of followership, right? I mean, not to leave them to go and do social media, because that's really about your brand, but you have oversight over that as well. And also, then we used to share, some of these are student internship experiences we shared in the community, and we shared on social media as well. So we were finding intent. So I remember I had one of the faculty members reach out to me in email saying, wow, this is really interesting. We know students go on internships, but we really haven't really heard much in terms of their stories. Because even though we do sessions where students share the stories, it's mostly other students who come for the sessions, not faculty. So we used to send this via email, right, our internal email system. So us sending it made us visible to them. If the faculty who said that is talking to an employer, that person is already an advocate for my department. And other things you want to consider, right? So, career fair. Case of Ashesi, for some years, I mean, for a long time we were not charging, right? Because at the time we still felt like we're the space we wanted to build the network, right? So once again, contextualize it, right? Contextualize it so that look at if it doesn't make sense to introduce payments, don't. But for us, employers pay to even just participate in the fair. So it's not a lot. It's like, I think, it's not more than 300 CDs. I don't know how much. I think that's like $50 or something they pay. But more employers means more money, right? And then we have sponsorship categories. So it could be platinum, gold, silver, bronze. And for those people, they have services that other employers are not privy to. And because one of it is more visibility, more floor space, or access to a certain kind of students, and employers will pay money to do that, right? So you want to understand, even if you don't want to charge people who come, maybe you want to have some sponsorship privileges. You can make it up. We made some of these things up where, we had they were able to do like a short meeting with our executive team, meet Patrick, the floor space, they had meals, they had, you can make it up. Think of what employers want and make it a privilege, and people will pay to attend a career fair and pay for that, right? And also we had career fair competitions. So career fair competitions, which the employers gave, some of them gave students money for, right? So and some of them would support. So we had one competition called Most Enterprising Business Pitch. So that one, so what they did was student businesses, and then part of it, employers gave either funding or mentorship. So that's a way that you can also begin to look at funding for your students who want to be entrepreneurs and have ventures also. So unique employer services as well. Look at how you can have student ambassadorship. So you create student ambassadors. Employers have to pay some money to have student ambassadors who attend to certain specific needs of the employers. Networking opportunities, access to students of certain high academic standing, publicity. We used to have a student newsletter. For employers to post in that newsletter, for example, they can pay something before they can post in that because it gives them visibility. They will pay for visibility. These are some of the things you can think about. Yesterday, somebody was telling me about how they can have events, and even what are the events, they can have employers brand it. Employers want visibility. How can you give them visibility? They'll pay for it, right? And sponsoring events in exchange for brand visibility. I remember one career fair we thought about, should we have like a key sponsor whose name is attached to the career fair? So let's say Vodafone Career Fair. But obviously you know that means that they also call the shots, right? You don't have total monopoly over that. Scholarship programs, so employers who want to sponsor students, scholarships, you can look at that as well. Finally, some institutions, you can look at how you can, if you have the opportunity to do that, how can you put some, a quota of the student fees? So maybe as part of the fees, they pay, I'm making this up, 100 CDs or $100 for career initiatives or career services, right? If you can do that, then that way you have some funding already as students are admitted to be able to run some of these things, right? So some of the things I talked about, speak the language of your desired stakeholder, Start small. If you don't have funds at all, demonstrate relevance, get some funds, and scale up, right? And slow and steady wins the race. We're talking sustainable, which means money will not come today, tomorrow. It will come over time as you are consistent in all the things we've talked about today. So we have Yasmin, who's the CEO of Ashesi, and then Kwame Afre, HR manager of Talo Oil, who are going to just quickly tell us from the perspective of institutional management for Yasmin, from the perspective of employer for Kwame Afre and Talo, what makes them want to give you funds? What is it that you will make them say, okay, I want to fund what you're doing, right? So, activity. All right, so what are some of the initiatives or strategies that we haven't talked about, but some of you are doing? I mean, yes, we have no funding, we have also have moderate and limited funding. What are some other things you're doing towards funding that's working that you can share with us?
So we call stakeholders into the room, and we use our student stories to sell to the funders. So yeah, so like we get a 2-year funding for our career development services. So we are using funders basically.
Okay, so is it like based on the student stories, then they decide to fund, or is it given they're going to fund anyway?
No, for the career development, it's based on the student stories. So we are saying that we provide access to quality education, and this is what they're becoming, this is what they're doing out there, so you can fund someone else like to go through the whole process.
How do you share those stories?
We actually interview the students, when the alumni basically, okay, but also students are doing something when they're in the universities. Okay. So we are documenting their stories, and we're using social media.
Social media, okay.
Yeah.
So when you document the stories, where are they like on the website somewhere, or just straight to social media?
Straight to the social media, but we also have an internal portal where we have our stories that our sponsors can access.
So you're looking at internal partners and an external.
Yeah.
So how many of you have departments that run social media for you? Do you have social media handles? Could be for your department or for your institution. Do you have control over that? You have control over it. Do you use them for student stories? Does it yield anything? Or do you do the connection, student stories, relevance to the employer?
For student events or anything like a conference or career fair,
yeah, but
they use the social media for visibility. And in terms of marketing purposes or innovations.
Marketing is what I want to hear.
Yeah.
What do you do for marketing?
For innovations, we post those stories in the social media.
But how do you know if so who's your target stakeholder? Is it employers?
Employers.
How do you know that they are seeing that content?
Well, we have our alumni in those institutions. They give us feedback.
Right.
Yes.
The alumni.
The alumni.
What about employers? Have you found out if they are seeing this content?
Yeah, they are seeing, because like we've been around for some time, and most of the listed companies in the stock exchange, our alumni are present. So we get a lot of feedback, which is reasonable enough to gauge the feedback from the industry.
Okay, so that's another thing you want to do, is find out from the employers. If employers are your target stakeholders, right, for the funding, you want to find out from some of them, are you seeing this content we're pushing out? If they're not seeing it, then you want to find out from them, how can we make it more visible to you, right?
Okay, great. Hello again, everyone. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to join in person. Abigail, you've shared a lot of nuggets, right? And so I don't know that there's that much more to add. But I wanted to share a few things just to build on what you've communicated. And it's really 3 things that I wanted to share. I think that from the perspective, from where I sit, right, from the perspective of an administrator with oversight on the university's finances, regardless of what category you find yourself in across the different groups that Abigail instructed you to put yourselves in, the reality is that resources are finite. And so, you know, when we're looking at allocating university budgets, at least in our context, and I would imagine that it applies across many contexts, you know, there's this issue of prioritization. And so the point that Abigail made around just making sure that what you're doing within your departments really, really align with the institutional goals and KPIs is extremely important, because it's also through that lens that's located. Are we putting resources in the places and towards the activities that position us to basically execute on our KPIs and our strategic goals? So it's of paramount importance that that is very clear, that your budgets and what your focus is really aligned with institutional KPIs. So that's one thing, just reinforcing what Abigail has already shared. The other piece is around, telling the story, right? And I think, Abigail, you phrased it in the context of telling the story of your outcomes, essentially. I think that's also very important, especially if you want internal stakeholders to become advocates, right, for sourcing more funds for your department. But I'll take it a step further and say, it's not just telling the story, but really having a vision for your department. I think that sometimes we really, especially when we're going through our, what typically happens in institutions, right? You're going through your budgeting cycle, and it's annual, it's very near term. I think that in really thinking about sort of the sustainability of your activities, it's much easier if it rallies around a vision that you have for your department. And so it also helps when decisions are being made, when planning in terms of university resource allocation is being made. There's a vision that's in mind, a longer term vision for what we're trying to do with career services within our institutions, rather than sort of the more myopic view around what we're trying to do year on year. So that's one bit that I wanted to add. And then the final piece that I wanted to share was, again, within the context of finite resources, really being able to also demonstrate efficiency, right? I think that, being able to demonstrate that some of the things that we're trying to do, be it stakeholder engagement vis-a-vis prospective employers, more alumni engagement, etc., if there are ways to do it efficiently. So not just, collating the budget, but really thinking about efficiency in doing it. Income generation, I think, as an example, was highlighted earlier in doing it. It also helps. It also helps the institution to really look at matching funds, to really look at being able to do more with finite resources. So those are three nuggets that I just wanted to add, but I think a lot has been covered, and it's really exciting to also hear about what you're doing within your institutional context that we can all learn from. So that's it from me, Abigail. I'll pause here to see if there are any thoughts or questions, or hand over to Kwame.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. I think we want to hear from Kwame before we get to questions. So Kwame, you can unmute and share. Thank you so much, Yasmin.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, please, we can.
Thanks for inviting me to your session, Abigail and Ashesi. It's always exciting to be part of this discourse. I know this was scheduled to be an in-person program, but unfortunately there's been a lot happening, and I couldn't be there in person, but I'm happy to contribute. I've been listening over the last couple of minutes, and I think a lot of the things that obviously have been said by Yasmin and also Abigail really tie to what I was planning to speak about. I think the first and most important thing really for career services, like the individuals we have in the room, and what they look to do or what they have been doing really is to try and connect themselves with their key stakeholders or their key target audience. And I want to tell the story really about how it has worked for ourselves as an organization, and also with Ashesi. One of the key things that really has been what has kept us, going on this relationship with Ashesi is really the benefit we get. And I might be very ambitious to say that I do think that we benefit more from the relationship with Ashesi than they do benefit from us. And it's only because of that continuous connecting of the dot and seeing where they plug in into our wider organization. So if you can, I'm not sure how much of the individuals in the room have read about some of the things that we are doing in the area of STEM and some of the things that we are generally doing, with our social performance, or what in other companies you call the corporate social responsibility. A big part of those things that we look to do, or those strategy that we've set for ourselves for the near and long term, actually fits directly into how HEIs has targeted, the way they provide value to us. And I believe it's not just us, but I believe it's either cut across other organizations as well. But most importantly, I think how that for us has made it easy to be able to participate and create for ourselves a unique identity as an organization. And so if you take the STEM project, like what we're doing with the social performance, you see that over the years, we've been looking to support STEM education from the lowest form of education into the highest, which typically ends up in the university level. And part of those pilots, we had to collaborate with HEIs to do that. But I think in collaborating with them, it really was more around how some of those infrastructure that helps us to be able to measure and report on how we are performing in that area was easily identified, and that relationship was easily, sort of established. We couldn't immediately do this with all other universities because there weren't that actual metrics to help us see how we can easily get that value immediately. So that's one, for example, how to really then connect with your potential stakeholders and to get the value out of it. And they also see the value they get. And so if you take that story that the journey we've been on and the narrative I've been trying to create to say that if I am very bold to say we benefit more from HEIs than HEIs gets from us, and then really, I think that's a relationship we always want to keep it going. The other part is that we've been we've had a lot of corporate career services in other sister universities or other universities in Ghana, even outside of Ghana, invite us to, be part of their career fairs or what they are doing in the career services or support them. I think sometimes a big part of it really is about preparedness, but also how we can see the straight line of sight in what we get to gain. Because we're a commercial business, we like to directly plug into some of the things we are doing today and realize and report on them to make, create the brand identity that we want. So I think with the career services in HEIs, one of the things they've done very well is that their proximity to us is really something I will commend. And for a lot of the programs they do, it's not just doing the program to tick a box. So for example, we've participated in other career fairs in other campuses, and it was just a career fair. Really, we just have people who just come there because it's a day where we are doing a career fair, and so just people then come there to do a career fair. But whether, the students are getting the value out of it, the employer is actually, coming out of that career fair feeling that it was a day well spent somewhere where the individual could have been doing something else for their organization or making money in itself. It's realized. So, typically planning for a career fair from a company perspective is very involving. You need to get a lot of our technical people to be there on the ground to talk to the students, to help them appreciate what it's like to work for our company. It's very hard to have to take about 5 of these technical engineers away from their daily job. If you look at our business, we make a lot of millions in a day. And so how we calculate, the value that individuals create for us really is about how much hours that they are spending close to the asset or in the office and being close to it to monitor that operation. And we've had an experience where we've been to some career fairs that even though this organization or the school that organized this event didn't really care much what was happening. And we had sent over 5 engineers and 2 support staff all the way out of Accra we've taken a flight in and out, and we basically got nothing because we couldn't get even students to interact with. So it was a value proposition that the career services team sold to us that, for example, this is going to be, the way we are going to organize it. This is the value you get. But when we actually got there, we didn't get that value. And we've stopped a lot of engagement with other universities because the same thing happened, because we didn't get that value and we wouldn't, repeat it a second time. And so what I would say is that it's most important that whilst you are looking to identify what your key stakeholders are, how do you want to sell this value of how the opportunities you're looking to fund yourself, and everything, I think you need to then look at how you create a long-term, sustainable benefit, mutual benefit to both sides, whether to yourself and to your career services. I do believe that a lot of companies can support these activities, but if they don't see that benefit in long term or even in the short term, a lot of these people wouldn't be very convinced to do that. The final thing that I had said I wanted to talk about is if you are in a career services and you want to plug it into corporate or any part of the academic ladder, services or support organization, and you want to plug into corporate, I think one of the things you need to do is, research a little bit about where the organizations are focusing today. Because if you then be able to identify where we are focusing or what our priorities have been maybe in the near term, and this changes a lot, it changes every now and then. So immediately you're able to plug in and identify that, okay, these are, the areas we see you going, and this is how we can help you. For example, in our organization, we take every part of our talent attraction very seriously. So entry level for a lot of companies, they might not take serious, but in our company, we take that very seriously. Even though a lot of those would not automatically turn into long-term permanent employment, a lot of the time, those are how we want our narrative to be as an employer of choice. So if you look at how many organizations are looking at themselves as an employer of choice, most often you find out that they are also very interested in their entry-level recruiting, and they want to be positioned and their brand identity to be one that will be sought after. So engaging with organizations like HEIs would really has distinguished themselves, in churning out graduates with the right attitude, leadership, knowledge. It's one of the things that's easy for us. Finally, I like to say that for a lot of the burden that is on us as an organization to help create local capacity, we take that responsibility on, going on initiatives of sponsoring support agencies to help train locals in certain areas. If those are part of the things that you're doing as part of your career development for your students, I think for companies like us, we'll be interested. And so when we get students from HEIs where, they are already very good in, their CVs are up to date, they are very good in how they present themselves, how they communicate. We feel like a big part of that work has really been done for us, and it makes it very easy for us to just, engage these students on a regular basis. And the quality, and here I emphasize on quality because we do have a blend of, students who come through our programs, whether it's work experience, even national service, or even employment. A lot of these people who have come from, for example, HEIs have distinguished themselves. So it helps us continue to see how do we best support and invest in that area to continue to have that, that benefit. And so I wouldn't want to keep going, but I'll be open to take questions if there are any questions. But it's really been an experience and then a journey for us, having these mutual relationship. And like I've said today, I think I can probably say that we benefit a lot more from HEIs than they do. So we will look to support you more.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kwame. Thank you so much, Kwame. And just to before I go on to the point I was going to make, he mentioned make it easy for them to engage, demonstrate relevance. I talked about it. Let it be relevant to what they're doing. And then excellence, right? Demonstrate excellence. So it's consistent success over time. Tallow Oil has sponsored our career fair. They've been gold sponsors, the highest level of sponsorship for over 10 years consistently. So I think at this point, if there are questions for both Yasmin and Kwame, we want to take that. Please.
Okay, I have the microphone.
There was a Eugene's hand, and then
mine came first.
Oh,
first.
Okay. When you're done, Eugene. Then.
Okay, thank you so much for this beautiful presentation. It's just what I wanted for this session. My question would be, how did you measure the value you got from the career fair? Because you said you had attended different career fairs, but you didn't go back to some of them. However, like Abigail said, that you've been sponsoring for 10 years. So what was the value you got that made you stay with Ashesi for 10 years?
So the first, and a lot of these, I would say that you overlook what it means and the work that goes into how Ashesi gets us to be involved at this level. The first part is that I think Ashesi is one of the only few of the institutions that we deal with who actually usually are 1 year ahead of their planning schedule for career fairs, right? For instance. So even before the next cycle, they're already preparing for the next one. So we've just recently finished the 2022 one, I think about 3 months ago. But I do know that, within a short period, we might start having conversations about what the next career fair is scheduled for and the plan for it and everything. What that helps us is that because organizations' budget cycle are very different, and sometimes a lot of the time you only want to reach out to the organization when you are ready to reach out to the company. What you are missing is that you are missing the opportunity to actually be thought about and considered as part of their financing cycle. Because some organizations are budgeting in Q4, some are budgeting in Q1, some are budgeting in Q2. So think of it this way: if Ashesi had come to us initially and have continuous engagement with us, I remember even when we started, having a core interest in the detail of the career fair in itself, there had always been this consistent engagement. It's about the pre-engagement into these events, helping us appreciate, what we stand to gain, what the categories are. I remember we used to get a lot of emails around, explaining to us how the detail of the day's event will go, what we will get. It helps our people to plan. So we work in a diverse environment. We have about 52 nationalities at some point, which means that a lot of the people take time as a very critical part of their day or the things that they expect to prioritize. And so when we do recognize that these things are being followed through, it's one of the things that kept us even going back. So that's one. The second thing is the day of the event. A lot of those support on the ground, it's very easy. So think about this way: you get a premium treatment for a peanut fee, right? And so typically we have a lot of support on the ground. We have the priorities to choose within the competition. So we are an engineering focused organization, and we have a lot of engineering operations going, and we have like the opportunity to even actually just pick from the best of engineering students who have gone through a competition. That even for us, it's because if you look at sometimes you have about 90 to 100 organizations participating in the event, and a lot of these engineering students then find us to be an attractive organization. I think for us, that really is something that kept us going back. But actually what we pay for the career fair in itself, it's very good and very generous. So if you ask me, I think that it's really just about how they plan and prepare for these activities over the years. And a lot of the time, even for some of the consistent universities that we work with, they come to us in a 2-week notice period to join. And a lot of the time we have to turn it down because it's just practically impossible to assemble 5 engineers, assemble 5 technical people, assemble support team and logistics to attend this event. I might be leaving out some things, but I think on top of it, it's really just about how they prepare, their preparedness, their proactiveness, their engaging, the benefit. And every year, even though we've been participating, they always sell the benefit to us, which for me, I think it's great. We always see that new benefit to continue to support it. I know it's a long-winded answer, but I hope I gave some nuggets there.
Yes, I mean, that was excellent. Thank you so much, Kwame. Somebody was actually asking Kwame if you were an alum of Ashesi, because I think you're sharing the Ashesi story too well to just be an outsider,
Yeah. So That's a very interesting question, Abigail. Now, unfortunately, I am not an alumni of HESI, but I recently had to go back to my university and had a very serious conversation with the career services and the dean of students to say there are a lot of opportunities. Unfortunately, we have come from this university and we don't see the effort from the career services and what they are doing to support these students. I think it's the deliberate effort that we have a career services that focuses on developing students. I think that creates the distinguishing factor. It just creates.
Thank you so much. There's another question.
Okay, Abigail, thank you very much. I think my question goes to Kwame again. He was stressing on the benefits that they are getting. More or less, they are getting benefits more than HEIs. And that's self-disclosure. That's how I say it. And I see it to be a very honest saying from him. But can he elaborate a little on the benefits that they are getting from HEIs that perhaps you don't have the slightest idea? Can he tell us some of the benefits they are getting from HEIs? Perhaps, because the way he was saying, he said the benefits they are getting from HEIs University is more than what you are getting through your career phase. And on the lighter side, he looks like a UCC product. Kwame, are you a UCC product? Specifically, are you a Bicoma? That's on the lighter side. Okay. Come and do some program there. Come and sponsor us.
Okay, so on the specific, so I'm sure you realize that a lot of the classes that come out of the HESI are very small as compared to the university I've come from. I'm from University of Ghana, and we graduate over thousands of graduates even from a single class, right? And if you look at HESI, those classes are very small, and usually a lot of these individuals also have opportunities outside of Ghana. In fact, they have Fortune 500 companies they could opt to work within, because those opportunities are also open to them. One of the things that used to help us a lot is that we used to get these CV books that we receive from HESI that sort of gives us a preview of all the students in the class. So even without necessarily meeting them in person at the time of the career fair, we do know who are the individuals in the class, what's their background, what they've been doing, and all of that. And we usually would engage managers to say, look at these class of students, look at what they've been doing. So before we even come on campus, we've spot picked some of the individuals and we are going to look for them when we come to talk to them. This is not something you usually will not get with any other university. I think it would take more work for those other universities sometimes to do that for those large classes. But it really takes a little bit effort to get that to the employer. So that's one. The second part of this is that I think there's been the recognition of the fact that our support over the years to HESI really is appreciated. And so if you look at some of the platforms they give us in terms of even brand identity, that works for us and it's priceless, right? So we can pay for the brand identity we get with some of the top students who come from HESI who could be working for an organization back in the US because, they have that opportunity. And also just being, an employer of choice and being associated with a lot of the organization, the programs HESI organize. So for example, this one, I don't know how many organizations in Ghana are participating in this, but we get opportunity to even interact in the room with you and have this discourse ongoing. And it comes, and we pay no fee for it. It comes as a privileged, with the relationship that we've had ongoing in the last decade with HESI. And there's a lot. In fact, we participate in a lot of high-level engagement, even feeding into the curriculum of HESI, which we find, very interesting. We feel like it's helping us shape what we will expect the students to be doing before they even come out of school to join us. And like I said, if you look at our STEM program that we've been sponsoring, it is really from the basic into the university level. And so every time we get to shape this, in fact, now we've extended to the PhD level. Every time we get to shape this one way or the other, we are very happy to do it. And it really just becomes something we can report on and be proud of.
The CV book, an explanation of what that is just a compilation of all the CVs of our final year students into a book. electronically now, and we just make it available to our employers, which makes it easy, and it's alphabetical and in majors. And they can search, per certain keywords. So it makes it easy for them to recruit from using that as well. And so one thing that I really get from Kwame is value for money. You want the funding, create value, and let them see that value so that it's easy. Trust is also another one. Thank you. Yasmin.
Very quick. I just wanted to, I know Kwame has expressed this in terms of, because of the value that Tolo is getting from the relationship with Ashesi, he's put it within the context of, we're getting more value than Ashesi is probably getting from us. But I just wanted to put that into context a little bit. I do think that, maybe the monetary value of participating in a career services, et cetera, seems nominal relative to what they're getting out of it. But from Ashesi's perspective, and I think this applies to a lot of career services departments across institutions, there is real value in nurturing this type of relationship with a corporate, right? We cannot quantify, what we get in terms of the joint brand equity, right, of having our graduates placed in a place like Tolo. There are other pieces as well, right, in terms of actually the actualization of Ashesi's mission, right? Abigail didn't share this explicitly, but one of the institutional KPIs that we have is that 90% of our graduates are placed, right? Quality opportunities within 6 months of their national service, and we want to retain them on the continent. That's huge for us. And having these relationships with corporates actually help us actualize that mission, which then draws the funding support to do more. So those are some of the intangible, benefits of this type of mutually beneficial relationship that we have with corporates. The last one that I'll also mention is that the career services link sometimes can also lead to things like a scholarship link, which also benefits the university financially. So there are relationships that we have from a career perspective of an employer that then translates into that employer wanting to fund, let's say, scholarships, more students being educated through Ashesi, which then feeds the pipeline, right, for recruitment. So I just wanted to put that into context as well.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. I want to say thank you to Yasmin and Kwame. The information you've shared has been amazing, very insightful, and I'm sure that we're living here with good information that we can take back to our institutions, into our context, and make it work for us. Thank you so much, Yasmin and Kwame. Just one final thing before we go. I want to hear from you in terms of what are we leaving this place with? Elevator pitch for your department. I think we don't even do that well enough. I mean, I'm listening to Kwame and the things he's talking. I was like, do we actually tell all employers we do all of these things? No. You tell students, elevator pitch, create an elevator pitch for yourself, for the interview, career fair, but we don't do that for our departments, right? Please. In fact, what we need to do is get these details, and then we ask you, in a month's time, send us your elevator pitch for your department, You're
not selling yourself just flat, but you know what your stakeholders, for instance, your employer or Ashesi board, for instance, are looking for. You sell yourself that way. You know what employers are looking for. You sell yourself that way. You know what students and even parents are looking for.
Parents.
You sell yourself that way. So you're targeting, however it is you are marketing yourself. So that's what I want to
Thank you very much. Yes, please. Quality organization.
Like the CV book he spoke about. I think something that we should all...
You can start doing. Yeah. Awesome. Yes.
Mapping out potential funders, we've just indicated the various funding sources that are available. And now knowing very well that I don't have funding today, going forward, the next step is to identify the interest areas of potential funders and initiate the action.
Make it relevant to them. Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. So data is key. Data
Thank you. Key. Data is key. Please, data is everything. Two more and then we are done.
Well, so it's very important that we understand that no matter how much the funder is worth, there's no way they are going to throw money at you like that. There's something we call WeFM, which is what's in it for me.
Exactly.
And every buyer ask that question. Everyone who is giving money out, well, the person should be, of course, we are all wise enough to want to know what's the value in it. And so what's in it for me, we FM, is very important.
We FM.
Let us give that to them. Help them to think that if they bring in their money, they are going to get even more than what they,
awesome. Thank you. Yes.
What I also learned is that there has to be a cost sharing.
Cost sharing, okay.
You shouldn't let them know that we are placing all the burden on them, but in a way, we should also find a way that the institution management should be ready to also fund a portion.
Okay.
That will even motivate these donors to know that they are not totally taking the burden, but it's the cost sharing.
So there was the alumni giving, right? There was a funding organization that said, we're giving this amount of money. If alumni can match it with a certain amount, they're going...
Usually when the institution is trying to raise funding from a certain group of people, and so they approach another funder who offers to match, so sort of to encourage, to urge people, okay, if I give $1, someone else will match it with another $1, so it will be $2. So you sort of, people get more excited about giving. But the cost sharing, at least from how I've seen it done across different groups at HEIs, usually when you put out a request for funding from an organization or whatever it may be, there are certain components like the salaries, administrative overhead, renting spaces, all of that are typically included in the budget. And HEIs, typically, one of the ways in which HEIs helps close that gap is to offer to take up that cost. So paying the salaries of the career team or the team that's organizing the career fair, paying, instead of charging rental, all of that is covered by the institution. So HEIs absorbs that cost so that the funding organization just pays more for external costs or direct program costs.
Thank you, Eben. Thank you.
This one I must say when I'm standing. If you are doing fundraising for anything, please don't be cheated that you have done the best proposal that will win you the funding. No. It's about networking. Like now, for example, if Talo had some money to give to a university, which university would you think it will take that money? Honesty. Just say.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming for this session. Thank you for my session helpers. Thank you.